Have you ever wondered when brides and grooms first started placing little figures on top of their wedding cakes? Today, we're diving into more than 200 years of history behind the wedding cake topper. You might just spot pieces you'll recognize from your grandmother's or even your own wedding. Hi, I'm Carol. I share the history and stories behind vintage treasures. And though I'm not an expert, I show you how I sell with confidence on Etsy so you can turn your love of vintage into a thriving shop. Wedding cake toppers have actually become one of the best sellers in my Etsy shop, which makes this history especially close to my heart. Over the years, I've been able to find and share some beautiful vintage toppers with brides, collectors, and families looking to carry on traditions. I'll be showing a few of those from my shop throughout this video so you can see how these timeless pieces have been cherished across generations. I'll also be sharing some photos from weddings in my family spanning back about 130 years. Stick around till the end of the video and I'll show you my #1 bestseller vintage wedding cake topper. Though it seems my Etsy tutorial videos are the more popular episodes on my channel, these deep dives into vintage history are my favorite ones to research, script, film, and edit. I love learning the history behind the vintage items I carry in my shop. In medieval Europe, wedding cakes were not sweet confections at all, but rather breads or spiced buns. Guests sometimes stacked small buns in a tower, and the couple would attempt to kiss over the pile for good luck. Over time, fruitcakes became popular in England, sturdy enough to last and decorated simply. Guests often viewed these symbolic stacks as blessings of fertility. These early traditions laid the groundwork for the celebratory centerpiece that we know from our weddings today. In 1840, Queen Victoria's wedding cake set the tone for centuries of tradition. Covered in what became known as royal icing, the cake represented purity and affluence. It was decorated with figurines of doves, cupids, and intricate sugar sculptures. Though photography was still in its early days, engravings and detailed descriptions from 1840 give us a glimpse of Queen Victoria's enormous cake, covered in white icing and symbolic figures. It set the trend for white wedding cakes like we know them today. As weddings grew more elaborate in the Victorian era, cakes became true centerpieces. Couples began adding decorative ornaments, sometimes flowers or figures sculpted from sugar or wax. These embellishments were the precursors to what we now call toppers. Bride and groom figurines on wedding cakes became popular after Queen Victoria's 1840 wedding, when she featured miniature sculptures of herself and Prince Albert on her cake. The trend spread to the United States, the first commercially produced non-edible toppers appearing around the 1890s, and they became an iconic part of the American wedding tradition. Though I don't have a photo of their cake, this is a photo of my husband's great-grandparents who were married in the 1890s. Look at all the flowers she was wearing. It's really a beautiful photo. And here's a photo of my great-grandparents on their wedding day in 1900. I love that he's holding a banjo. This is my only great-grandparent that I ever saw in my life. Of course, I don't remember him because I was just a baby, but he was still alive when I was born, so I think that's pretty cool. I love her dress. She was really a beautiful woman. By the late 19th century, glass, wax, or porcelain figurines resembling brides and grooms began appearing on wedding cakes in Europe and America. In the early 20th century, German manufacturers produced commercial toppers, often made of bisque, porcelain, or chalkware, and exported them to the United States. These fragile pieces were often kept as heirlooms by couples, treasured long after the wedding day. I'm sorry I don't have any pictures of any relatives' wedding cakes, except my own, to show you a little later in this video. But these are my dad's parents the day they were married in 1918. They were very poor. In fact, my grandpa was working in a broom factory when they got married, and my grandmother was teaching school. You can see her dress, which I'm sure either she made or her mother or one of her sisters made, was really intricate around the waist. It had some really beautiful details. And of course, my grandpa's wearing a three-piece suit with a pocket watch attached. In the 1920s, weddings were swept up in the glamour of the Jazz Age. Brides embraced shorter hemlines, sparkling beadwork, and daring feathered headpieces. And cakes often reflected that same sense of drama. Many couples decorated their cakes with lavish arrangements of flowers, ribbons, wax blossoms, and even feathers. Ostrich feathers in particular were a favorite, echoing the elegance of bridal fashion and bringing a touch of movement and height to the cake. These toppers were less about representing the couple directly and more about making the entire cake a dazzling centerpiece. The use of feathers symbolized the boldness and extravagance of the era. Think Great Gatsby. Weddings in the Roaring '20s often leaned into theatrical elements, drawing inspiration from Hollywood films and the luxurious parties of the elite. A feather-topped cake wasn't just a dessert, it was a statement of modern style and prosperity. Looking back, these toppers captured the spirit of the decade, playful, elegant, and unapologetically grand. By the 1920s and 30s, cake toppers had become mainstream in America. Mass-produced in celluloid and composition, they reflected the rise of department stores and mail-order catalogs. In 1937, Sears began listing toppers for sale, making them widely accessible. Probably a reflection of modern style, definitely not of prosperity. Here you see a picture of my husband's grandparents when they were married in the 1920s. I think her hat is just adorable, and I'm sure that those flowers were absolutely gorgeous. From this point on, toppers were not just decorations. They became keepsakes, cherished reminders of the wedding day. In the 1930s, wedding cakes reflected both elegance and resourcefulness. During this era, bakers often relied on the Lambeth method, a technique of layering intricate royal icing piping into ruffles, scrolls, arches, and garlands that gave cakes a sense of ornate grandeur. Even when budgets were tight, cakes carried symbolic meaning. Sugar baskets overflowing with flowers, tiny edible slippers, and silver bells often adorned the tiers, each detail representing joy, prosperity, or good fortune for the couple's future. Unlike today's elaborate toppers, the artistry of the cake itself was the main decorative focus. Looking at this recreated scene, the bride and groom are dressed true to the decade, standing proudly beside a cake that embodies the craftsmanship of the 1930s. The careful symmetry, delicate sugar flowers, and polished piping showcase the era's artistry, even in lean times. These cakes weren't just desserts, they were works of art, carefully created to be a memorable centerpiece of the celebration, symbolizing beauty, endurance, and hope in a decade marked by challenges. In the 1940s, wedding cakes carried both beauty and the realities of wartime life. With sugar and butter rationed, many cakes were scaled down in size, or even made with substitutions like lard to stretch ingredients. Some families displayed an artificial cake, a cardboard form elaborately decorated with icing that served as a stunning centerpiece, while guests enjoyed smaller slices of a simpler cake tucked away in the kitchen. These creative solutions meant that couples could still honor the tradition of a wedding cake, even in the face of rationing and scarcity. Decoration often reflected the era's spirit of resilience and patriotism. Fresh flowers, intricate piped icing, reminiscent of the Lambeth method, or modest yet meaningful details graced many cakes. Military-themed toppers also became popular, honoring grooms in uniform or couples separated by service. Even in difficult times, the wedding cake remained a powerful symbol of joy and continuity, reminding couples and guests alike that love endured despite the world's uncertainty. And those were uncertain times. This is a picture of my aunt and uncle on their wedding day, shortly before my uncle was deployed to Europe in World War II. In the 1950s, wedding cake toppers largely continued the tradition set in the 1940s, but with subtle changes that reflected post-war culture and the optimism of the decade. Most toppers still featured the classic bride in a flowing white gown and a veil alongside the groom in a tuxedo, often encased in a plastic arch decorated with flowers or doves. What shifted was the material. Lightweight plastics and celluloid became more common than the chalkware or bisque, making toppers more affordable and durable. The booming American consumer culture also played a role. Department stores, catalogs, and the rise of suburban weddings helped standardize the look of wedding toppers. Influenced by Hollywood glamour and the idea of the picture-perfect nuclear family, the 1950s toppers reinforced traditional roles while becoming cherished keepsakes for the growing middle class. And here is a picture of my mother, who was first a bride in 1950. And though that marriage didn't last, we do still have this beautiful picture of that extremely elaborate corsage and beautiful hat to look back on. By the 1960s, wedding cakes were getting taller and more dramatic. Many were stacked on pillars with multiple tiers reaching higher than ever before. While white icing was still the tradition, couples started adding soft pastel touches, pale pinks, mints, and powder blues that reflected the cheerful, stylish mood of the decade. The look was a little sleeker, a little more modern, but still very much a symbol of celebration and abundance. Cake toppers kept much of their classic look, but they began to mirror the fashions of the time. Brides were shown with bouffant hairstyles, shorter veils, and gowns that echoed the popular empire waistlines. Grooms stayed in tuxedos, but the figurines were now mostly made from lightweight plastic, making them more affordable and accessible. Many still featured the familiar arch, now fluffed up with lace or flowers, but by the late 1960s, some couples skipped figurines altogether, choosing fresh flowers or more personalized decorations instead. It was a sign that weddings, like the decade itself, were starting to embrace individuality and change. This is a picture from my mom and dad's wedding in 1960. I know that my mom's dress and my dad's suit both came from Jacobson's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Her dress doesn't really show up very well here, but it's a beautiful gold brocade, and I still have it. In the 1970s, weddings began to reflect the cultural shifts of the era, less formal than the traditions of the 1950s and 60s, but still rich with symbolism. Wedding cakes became a little more relaxed in style, often decorated with buttercream rather than stiff royal icing. Natural elements like fresh flowers and greenery began appearing more frequently on cakes, a nod to the back-to-nature spirit of the decade. Color palettes softened too, with muted pastels, creams, and earthy tones fitting right in with the era's bohemian aesthetic. Cake toppers of the 1970s were still popular, but they also started to change. While many couples used familiar plastic bride and groom figurines, brides were now depicted with longer hair, looser veils, and flowing gowns to mirror the fashion trends. At the same time, some couples chose to skip figurines altogether in favor of floral arrangements or personalized touches that felt more authentic to their style. The 1970s marked a turning point where wedding toppers shifted from a nearly universal tradition to more of a personal choice, paving the way for the customization we see today. By the 1980s, weddings became bigger, bolder, and more extravagant, and cakes reflected that same sense of excess. Think Princess Diana. Multi-tiered cakes often reach sky-high proportions, sometimes separated by dramatic columns or staircases connecting smaller sides. Buttercream and fondant decorations became more elaborate, with ornate piping, vibrant colors, and even fountains incorporated into the cake displays. Pastels of the 1960s gave way to brighter colors, metallic accents, and bold design choices that matched the lavish gowns and larger-than-life celebrations of the era. Cake toppers of the 1980s largely held onto the traditional bride and groom figurine, but with a more polished modern look. Plastic remained the most common material, though toppers often now featured brides with puffed sleeve gowns, cascading veils, big hairstyles, echoing real wedding fashion trends of the decade. Grooms continued in tuxedos, though the designs sometimes incorporated flashier details like colored bow ties to match wedding themes. At the same time, some couples began moving away from figurines altogether, opting instead for floral toppers or monogrammed ornaments that reflected the growing trend of personalization in weddings. And look how 1980s my wedding cake is. It's got the tears and everything. It was made by my aunt who decorated it beautifully. My cake topper up there on the top was plastic, and unfortunately it has not survived the years too well. It's pretty yellow now, despite the fact I kept it put away. And comparing young Tim and Carol to old Tim and Carol at our 40th anniversary a couple of years ago, you can see times have changed, and our family has grown by leaps and bounds. We have 4 children, one of whom is missing in this picture, and we have 2 sons-in-laws, and we have 8 grandchildren. And that wedding cake topper, it made it to the celebration too. By the 1990s, weddings took on a softer, more sentimental feel, reflecting the culture of the time. Cakes were still multi-tiered, but they often leaned towards simpler, smoother designs with pastel accents, buttercream piping, and floral arrangements. The over-the-top extravagance of the 1980s gave way to a sweeter, more romantic style, where personal touches were highly valued. Couples often looked for ways to make their wedding details feel meaningful and reflective of their personalities. Cake toppers from the 1990s mirrored this shift. While traditional bride and groom figurines were still common, the decade also popularized childlike versions of couples with wide-eyed, innocent features. Precious Moments toppers like this one, which remains one of the best sellers in my shop, captured that tender, almost storybook feeling of love. These figurines showed the bride and groom as sweet, youthful characters, often with oversized eyes and soft pastel details. For many couples, they weren't just decorations, but symbols of purity, faith, and the hope of building a family together. Today, these 1990s toppers are especially cherished by collectors and brides who want a nostalgic piece of wedding history. By the way, my best-selling topper is this Kay's collection white porcelain cake topper. I pick these up whenever I find them. I've actually sold 13 of them. It's the only thing in my shop I have sold that quantity of. And that's really something for a vintage shop. And guess what? These were originally sold at Dollar Tree. If this walk through wedding cake topper history has brought back memories, let me know in the comments. Did you or someone you love save a cake topper from their wedding? And if you're hunting for one yourself, you can find beautiful vintage toppers in my Etsy shop and all over Etsy, actually. I love sharing these stories because they connect us not only to history, but to the families who lived it. Thanks for joining me today. And remember, the vintage you bring into your home becomes a part of your story too.